Well, we're just going to jump right in. Who am I? Welcome back. Welcome back. For fans of the show, and I might have a couple, I don't know. They'll know that I didn't record yesterday, or at least I didn't. I didn't broadcast yesterday, and I didn't record because yesterday morning I had to take irrigation very, very early, right in the time frame when I would usually be recording. I had to do my irrigation, so I was never able to put together the show, but today I'm going to make up for it because I have two episodes going on today. One will be the one I post right now, the one I'm doing, and then the next one is going to be later on this morning. I'm going to have the same guest I had in my special edition show last week. She's going to come back. We did a really good job in our maiden voyage, if you will, our what do you call that when you're research and developing? In any case, it worked out pretty well, so we're going to do it again later this morning. So forgive me if it takes me a minute to get there, because basically what I'm doing is I am leaving my small self behind. And I'm coming into a space where it's my bigger self, but it's where my bigger self attaches to my smaller self. So it's the larger frame that concerns the smaller me. So it is me, but it's me from a broader perspective. It just doesn't have a lot of my individual details in it, because in the broader picture, in the bigger picture, my little self doesn't occupy as big a space there. So it can't be so many of my personal details in that bit of information. It might take me a few minutes to, break free of the lower atmosphere and get out into the non-resistant reaches of outer space. you know, the So who am I? Who am I, and why do I make this broadcast? Why do I make this program? Why do I do this exercise every day? Well, I actually, you might look at this and you might listen to me and you might think I'm foolish, you might think I'm delusional, and I'm sure that in some way I am, but I'm also in some way I'm really not. I'm not delusional. I'm looking at something, and what you might think I'm delusional about is that I have an agenda. I want to help something here. There is something I want to help us fix. I want to. I have an agenda, and yet I am all alone. You know what? I would restart this, except for I'm 3 minutes in, so the rule says I have to just keep going. So if I didn't like the way I started, too bad. You're on your way. But I do have an agenda, and the agenda is I want mankind to understand who he is, who she is, who we are, who I am. I want us generally to know this and collectively to know this. Sometimes individuals can know it, and a lot of individuals do kind of know it, or kind of suspect it, or imagine it, or there's all kinds of ways to look at this. But I want us all, as human beings, as a species, to know certain things. There's certain things that we can know. There are certain things that are very, very knowable, that we treat like they're mystical. Not that's not the right word. We treat them like they're um, inviolate sanctuaries of thought that we can never go to. It's highly, deeply personal to each individual. And so collectively, there's these things that we can't understand. And we have to allow each other to rest in superstitious misunderstandings rather than generally clearing it up with one another. And I want to help us do that. Now, the reason I think that I might be delusional is that I'm kind of a hermit. I never go anywhere. Well, we do go places. We travel. But what I'm saying is that there's nobody here in this project with me. And yet I imagine somehow I am in the service of raising the awareness of mankind. Now, fortunately, we live in a day and age where I have a platform. Now, nobody really listens to this platform, or, half a dozen at best. And there's 8 billion of us on the planet, and so that's not a very good ratio, 6 or so to 8 billion. But you got to start somewhere, right? And I also happen to know that I have universal consciousness working for us. There is a mechanism by which we all have access to all of each other's information. And somehow I believe that this will get out. Now, I'm going to do something right now. Very sorry. I'm going to take a very quick break. And I hope that when I come back, that I can jump back in. I'm a little disjointed already, but the question is, who am I? We're going to jump right into what we talk about all the time. My agenda is, I want to get us off fossil fuels. And I want us as individuals to have a better understanding of our psychological makeup so that we can make better choices individually in our own lives, so that we can understand our individual, I don't want to say mechanism again, our biotechnology, the equipment that we're driving, how our body actually works, how the field actually works, how our body works within the field. What are our emotions? They are actually it's our higher self giving us vibrational readings on the real world around you at all times. That's what your emotions are, but you got to learn how to read them. And so we're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about all of the woes of mankind, although that is just going to take us about bloop, and then we'll be done talking about the woes. But we're going to understand that they're sitting there. And then we're going to talk about all of the things that are in our favor, that are going in our favor, all the things that will, the structure itself is in our favor. It's very beneficent. And if you understand how it works and start working it correctly, you can start extracting from the universe the experience you're looking for. And that's really what it's all about. But hold on one second. To you, it will seem like no time at all has gone by. The only reason I mention it is if my frame of mind is slightly altered in the next couple of seconds. It's because I experienced a time lapse while you didn't. So I'm going to have to claw my way back to this state of mind. But I'll get there. So I'll see you on the flip side. Hold on. So basically, my thesis statement is that all the woes of humanity can be traced back pretty much to us not knowing who we are. Because all of the other challenges would be so much easier to handle if we understood our own equipment. By the way, I'm back, and I'm hoping that it didn't take me any time at all to get back to speed. Back up to speed. So, I have a small field of information. Although that small field of information actually represents quite a lot of information. And I have an hour and a half to discuss it. That's the platform of the show, Who Am I? Now, Like I said, I have 2 agenda items. One, or two, not 2 agenda items, two prongs to my agenda, 2 intentions that I'm after, two specific goals. One is that I want humanity to come to understand, like I have, that we don't need to be on fossil fuels, and that this is actually a very primary primary root cause of the paradigm of abundance, of scarcity. Excuse me. My mind is a little bit scrambled. Uh, our using fossil fuels is largely responsible for the paradigm of scarcity that we have going on, that we have created for ourselves, that does not actually exist in reality. In the world, that kind of scarcity is not natural, it's not normal, and we have created it by our increasing need for fuel, which actually is not a problem. Our increasing need for power, for energy, has brought us to this moment in time where we are dancing on a razor's edge in this moment. And the question is, do we have faith in ourselves, and do we have faith in the process, and do we believe that we are okay in our desire for more power? And the answer is not, we either have to keep burning fossil fuels or we have to go back to an agrarian society where all of us live out in the... It's not going to work, people. Look at who we are. We're not going back. So we either do that, we either go back to an agrarian society, or we keep burning fossil fuels, and neither one of those is actually the answer. The answer is we keep going forward in our technologies, in our desire for more energy, but we learn that we don't have to burn fossil fuels. And why do I know that we don't have to burn fossil fuels? Well, okay, that's a fair question. First of all, I feel like I'm... my consciousness is not exactly where I want it to be as I do this show. Right at this moment, I feel like I'm doing a pedantic, just regurgitation of all of my ideas. Let's just do it again. It's Groundhog Day, gotta do it again. And that's not exactly the inspiration I want to bring to this. There's a kind of energy that I want to seek here. Speaking of energy, as I am speaking of energy, I want to find that spark within myself where it's alive, where it's new, where it's fresh, where I really am. Now, I'm going to confine myself to the same, corral of topics that I'm always at. I'm always here. The question is, who am I? And it's, who am I in reference to source energy? And why do I do it that way? Well, we got to keep the topic somewhat contained. And who am I can get really, really big, and it can get from all kinds of angles. I could sit here and tell you, who am I, and what I did when I was 20, and what I did when I was 30, and who I think I am. I could do that from a very specific level, and I could go to the macro, and I could do the same. But if I don't keep it confined to source energy, then the reason I do that is because that's where all the meat is. Us understanding ourselves as source energy, and us understanding the energy issue in reference to source energy, is what's going to get us to the understanding that will free us from the paradigm issues we've got going on right now as human beings. The wars that never cease, the problems in our political landscape, all of the problems that we have on the ground with each other are all coming from these two prongs of the same subject. How human beings are extracting their energy from the planet at the moment is key. It's really key because it's going to the power structures that have developed upon the planet. All of the social control structures, the problems that we have with one another, the quarreling over spaces, and the lack of enough abundant resources to sustain everyone. And so the ones that are left out of the equation we've got going on right now, they're the ones that are rioting. They're the ones that are acting up. They're the ones that are protesting and being destructive. And then it causes other parts of us, the law and order parts of us, to like turn against them and stomp on them and try to control them in order to keep the peace. Because in general, as a whole, that's what we want to do. We want to keep the peace. We want order. And the way we have had order in the past has been through the law. And we've been doing that for quite a few years. We've been doing that for about 2,000 years. There was a small group of people who tried to organize in a different way some 2,000 years ago. But they were fairly quickly, it didn't take that many decades before, actually, was it centuries before that? A couple of centuries maybe before before that was shut down. It was shut down by way of being absorbed. They shut down the true Christ movement by absorbing it into the Roman Empire. And it changed its spirit, and it changed its what it was. And now that spirit, we call it Christianity, but it really isn't the same thing. I'm going to talk about something else, which doesn't have to do with anything, any religions or anything. If you're starting to worry about what kind of a wackadoo I am, don't worry, I'm not. I'm just talking about this from a kind of a general way. Now, I've been telling this story to anybody who's listened to more than one of my videos, and I have no idea who's listening to what. Whether those 3 views I got on the last one came from the same person, or whether it's 3 different people pounced on that one. There are ones with 0 views before that, so I don't have any idea who's listening to this. But I've been telling the story about my mother's explanation of the difference as she saw it, as she felt it, as she understood it, between the meaning of the Old Testament in general and the meaning of the New Testament in general. Now, people who know me understand that my specialty is moving out to the general. I am a general. I am a gisty general person. I am the kind of person who wants to move up to the highest order and view it from a broad view, incorporating general systems. I'm a general. I am a general, and I rarely like to talk to anybody about anything specific. I'm very particular about what specifics I talk about, because specifics are just not my jag. Although I do have a couple things that I'm good at. I have been creating sanctuary, and I'm doing a good job. I am pretty good at cooking. Went to culinary school for a year. I'm also used to be good at shooting pool. I'm not a bad bowler, and I garden There's specific things that I'm good at, but for the most part, I am a general, and I am really good at seeing general patterns, general pictures, and general structures. And so I'm going to be coming at it from this angle. I'm going to be coming at it from a general angle. And in general, I have now actually lost track of where I left the conversation to tell you about what a general I am. We're talking about, so we get, this is how this show works. When I do that, I circle back around. I'm going to circle back around, and we're going to come at it from another angle. Who am I is the question. Source energy is the reference. And understanding this is going to help me, first of all, understand how to drive my equipment through the landscape of my life, how to fly my starship through the galaxy of my individual life. How do you do that? How do you move your equipment in the direction of what you want instead of somehow always things turning out not the way you want? Is that the way? Do you have a life like that? You may or you may not. I don't know. I don't know who I'm talking to. Most of the people that I know that I've given the link to this show to, they're doing pretty well. You know, I haven't really given it to anybody who really needs it, I suppose. Who I think is having a really hard time in life. I tried to give it to one person, but he was breaking up with my daughter and not interested in my wisdom anymore because he couldn't bear to think about us because it was just too painful. And so even though he cared about me, he couldn't listen to my stuff. So I couldn't help him, even though I know he is hurting very badly. He is in pain and thrashing around a bit. And he cut his own throat on this because he didn't really have to break up with her. But because of the way he fussed, because of the way he refused to see the light, he felt physically that there was only one choice that he had to make. Now, I realize if he ever listens to this and recognizes who I'm talking about, he's going to wildly object to that characterization because he's going to say, I don't understand. He was absolutely forced to do this, whatever thing that he had to do because of, you know, how faithless she was, or you just don't know how terrible, how unfair, how, you know, are you kidding me? She's a sweetie, and you were seeing, I don't know, a reflection of your own darkness. She never wanted you to leave. She just wanted you to see who she really was. And you just wouldn't. You saw her as a broken doll. You saw her as someone that she had to fix. And that's all I have to say about that. What I am going to say is that this message goes out to all of us, even me. This message goes out to all of us. This idea of who we are in general. We need to generally understand in general who we are generally, because it's causing all of our problems. It is summoning demons. Now, I just say that. What it is it's summoning energies. And when those energies are negative and destructive, we call them demons. Hindus call it Shiva energy. There's all kinds of, but we don't understand what summons it. What our actions are within our own mind. When we cross our own energy stream, and I'll explain later what I mean by that, because I mean a very specific thing when I say that. When you cross your own energy stream, two things happen. And it happens energetically in the field. It's a field phenomenon. We are a field phenomenon. We are not just ourselves. We are ourselves, and we are also the field that we are contained in. I am both of those things. I am my micro self, and we are my macro self. We are all in this together, and our collectively understanding it on the one hand, and then individually understanding it on the other hand, because no matter how collectively we understand this, this is still an equation of individuals individually making our own way. And that's the key. You got to understand this micro macro nature of this and understand yourself both as an I and a we equally. The I is at least as important as the we in a way. To you, it's as important. Your I is as important to you as our we. And our we is what's important to all of us. And so the reason I'm kind of ponderously pounding this point in is because in politics or in our geopolitical activity, if you will, there is kind of a tug of war going on between the we and the I. You know, the concerns for the we causes us collectively to pass laws that say all of us have to do X for the good of the we. But then when that starts being an imposition to the I, or if it interferes with the I's ability to call our own shots, each individual absolutely should be free to go whatever pathway they wish. They should have complete freedom. But the only way that that becomes safe is if we understand who we are. And then if you want me to have a shot, if you want me to take a vaccination, okay, you've got to convince me. You are not allowed to just force me for the good of the whole. Convince me, and then I will. But if you try to shortcut that and say, oh no, we're sure that this is good for all of us, and in order for this to be good for the all, we've got to force all the individuals to do whatever. Well, every individual has divine autonomy. Divine autonomy. And we're going to talk about that too. I don't know if we're going to get to all of it today because we only got an hour and a half. And I've already blown almost a half an hour, and I haven't really done much of anything except for just climb to the right altitude. Took me a while to get there, messing with my water and messing with my equipment, and started off kind of in a boxy way. I was gonna just by rote go through my program. This is what I'm talking about. This is my thesis statement. One more time, I'm gonna tell you how it goes. And I thought to myself, well, nobody needs to hear that. One recording will do for that. We want to dig into this and really, get to the heart of what our freaking problems are. Now, in the spirit of the perspective of the world and the ratio of good to bad, it's only going to take me a couple of seconds to iterate in words what I see as the woes that betide mankind. I'm going to do an enormous list in just a couple words, because I don't want law of attraction to grab onto my negative thinking and carry me away in specific detail of negative things that I have no interest in talking about. What I really want to talk about, what I really want to get to, I want to get to the place where we fully understand how cool is our equipment, how vast is the information available to each and every living individual through this holographic matrix that we abide in. I want us to understand that we have been advanced genetically. Somebody gave us a bit of a bump. And they did it 200,000 years ago, but I have no idea how much time they gave us by giving, by how far ahead did they really bump us? Would we have gotten there? Probably not. In the last 200,000 years, we probably wouldn't have naturally gotten to where we are. Now, this little unnatural bump that they gave us there's some consequences to it. It makes us really magnificent, and our equipment is amazing, and our potential to read reality, our potential to navigate our experience, our potential to create the most amazing existence upon this planet for each and every one of us, divinely autonomous and calling our way, our own way, and synergistically, harmoniously interacting with one another. The potential for that is just breathtaking. What's standing in our way is also this little bump that they gave us has a drawback, has a thing that happens when we don't know who we are and we have this equipment. It's very destructive, very dangerous, we can be bulls in the cosmic china shop. Our tendency to create demons, our tendency to create Shiva energy, our tendency to fall into the thrall of Wetiko is high. When our psyche is damaged in any way, traumatized in any way, we have a tendency to go negative, to believe the negative, and to work in a backward manner to the way our equipment was designed to operate. When you are following your negative mind, you are literally walking 180 degrees in the opposite direction of what your soul knows you want. Now, I'm not just talking about the goody two-shoes stuff that your soul wants. I'm talking about the stuff that you want. Abundance, clarity, efficiency, relationship, comfort, abundance, joy, fun. All of those things. Do those sound like things? Love. Do those sound like things that you want? They are things that I want. I think it's what we all want. Throw freedom in there, and that's the whole package. That's what we all want. Now, the problem comes when your physical mind starts trying to translate those pure desires into what does that mean in specific reality around me. I might get it stuck in my head that freedom equals a car. And to some extent, that I'm not wrong about that, but it may or may not be a car. It may be an Uber, or the ability to Uber. You don't really need a car, do you? You just need freedom. And there's so many ways that you can get that freedom. You know, you could have friends that want to chauffeur you. You could make money and hire a chauffeur. You could learn how to drive yourself. Maybe you're blind, so freedom isn't that way. It's how are you translating? Don't get fixed in a physical translation and then let it turn your emotions negative when you don't see that particular physical translation appearing in front of you. Your insistence on things translating in a particular way stops you. It interferes with you being able to see or accept or experience that same spirit coming from a different direction. So if you insist that your abundance must come in the form of a 9-to-5 job that pays money to a bank account, or maybe it just has to be money. It has to be money, and I don't have any money. Then you're missing all of the ways that abundance is trying to come to you, and it might be trying to actually eventually end up as money to you. But you keep just staring at the bank account, and when the bank account is not moving, you're missing the friend that was trying to help you get to a place, to meet a person, to and then somebody was going to hand it to you. You know, they were just going to hand it to you because you had an idea that, clicked with they had money and they want to invest, and there you are, and the next thing you know, they're investing in your tattoo parlor. Or so Bashar's formula is insistence equals resistance. Your insistence that it has to be a particular way is blocking you from seeing how it's coming to you, trying to get to you from a less conventional way. It's trying to get to you from the right instead of the left. You're insisting it's going to come from the left because, I don't know, for some reason you got it fixed that way. Anyway, insistence equals resistance. So open up. The universe is vibrational. Fix on the good feeling. Pick good feeling thoughts. It's not actually delusional. You need to work with your inner being to navigate your system forward in the direction of where you want to go. You need to work with your inner being on this because your inner being is the one who's actually in touch with the reality of all reality. And you need to listen to her. And what is she saying? And how is she saying it? What is she telling you? Well, first of all, this one might be the first slide that it tries to... this is a favorite slide of mine. This represents to me your two minds. You are two minds. This large aperture on the left represents to me your source mind. The small one on the right is your physical mind. Your brain in your head, your brain in your skull attached to your physical body, the one that's going to die in a few years of something. It doesn't matter. This combination unit is you. That source mind aspect of you is not coming from somewhere else trying to impose upon you some kind of goody two-shoes agenda of its own that has nothing to do with you. That is not the setup. Remember, the show is called Who Am I? Well, ask yourself the question, who am I? Well, I'll tell you who you are. You are a binary system. You are a micro and a macro. You are a eternal continuum of energy and flow of information on the one hand. And you have come into a physical body, so you are also an expirational physical representation of this eternal continuum. You are both things. And the one is trying to help inform the other one. But if you don't understand who you are, you're not getting the message. So how does this work? Let's talk about your emotional guidance system. That broader perspective, that source self, that wide open aperture self, the one that's shining light on a great big swath of the specific physical, by the way. Here, the specific physical on planet Earth, Project Humanity, all of that. Your source mind is pretty keyed into everything going on planet Earth to a lesser degree, but absolutely there. Your inner being is vibrationally in touch with all of reality everywhere. It is through the holographic nature of the universe, it is in touch with all things. This is why your inner being knows who you are, knows where you are, knows where everything you want is, knows what you want. What is your inner being looking at? We ask this question every day. What is your inner being looking at? Your inner being knows everything. What's it looking at? It's looking at what you want. And more specifically, it's actually looking at love. It is love, and it is looking at love. You know, you've always heard this: God is love. God knows everything. God is everywhere. God can do anything. You know, they're not wrong. All of these things are 100% true. But I think it's really important to have a clearer understanding of what that freaking G word even means. I'm going to change it from a G word to an S word, and we're going to talk about it in a completely different way. We're talking about source energy, and we're talking about you as source energy. And then I believe also that a clearer understanding of a couple things, including source energy, is going to get us off fossil fuels. We didn't really need a full understanding of source energy in order to completely get off fossil fuels, but maybe we did. Maybe we did. Maybe if we had gone straight to the big kahuna 100 years ago, before we had fought World Wars I and II, we would not have understood the Holocaust scenario, the mechanism by which Wetiko, actually, what's a good way to put this? The mechanism by which authoritarian psychosis can consume us to that degree, where a whole nation of tens of millions of people followed a dark lord into an abyss. Now, when I was younger, I was fascinated with the Holocaust. Actually, I read all kinds of what did my fascination how it expressed itself was for the longest time I was a consumer of historical fiction novels. I loved fiction novels set in historical times, so that I could get a feel, a sense, a general gisty sense of what that time felt like through the eyes of, you know, the heroines and the heroes of the story, you know, and then I let my imagination blow the pictures into being, and then I'd kind of get a sense of what the time was like, and I would read lots of books all around that time period so that I could kind of sort it all out into a sense of flow. Oh, this is how it felt like, this is how it went. And I did a lot of that with and then then what I do is, after you get a framework built through your own feelings, what you care about, how you feel about that blows the time period to life for you inside of your imagination. Now you have some place to hang references and nonfiction things. So now you can read reference books or nonfiction material, or, you know, whatever, and it starts connecting. Oh, that connects to some of my favorite time periods are the American Civil War, the World War II in general, all around the world, and my father fought in the Pacific Theater, and then my psychological interest was the Holocaust. And then Henry VIII was another time period that I was in. It's hard to do all of time and all of everything that humanity has done. We've just been here for a while, and history, there's a lot to history. I think that the important thing to understand about history is not the names and the dates and some really dry, crusty information that nobody cares about, but to have a spirit sense of the time, what the gist of the forces that moved us, you know? And how do we understand it in reference to what's going on right now? What our lives look like now? All of that's interesting. I'm a bit of a lay historian, but I'm not a nerd about it. So I really couldn't tell you lots of names and dates, but I have a sense of things. As a human being, I do. Hold on. So let's get back to our main topic. Who am I, and what does my equipment look like? What does my equipment look like that I am using to navigate my life, navigate my desires, my space, to get from where I am to where I want to be? Now, I love my world. I'm having such a good time in my life. There are so many wonderful things going on around me. I live in a beautiful, beautiful sanctuary space that I have made so blessed and so benign to me. And it wraps me like a safe cocoon. But I also recognize that I live in a neighborhood where more turbulent things are going on. My neighbors are losing their minds. And I don't mean my immediate neighbors, although, my neighbors might have issues with one another. But what I'm speaking to a bigger picture. My neighbors in the United States, not just my neighbors on my street, the actual people that I know. We're having a bit of a growing pains moment in our understanding of who we are and what is possible and how you actually work the equipment to correctly move in the direction of where you want to go. Now, how you do that is you have to focus upon what you want. Now, everybody thinks, well, I'm already doing that. I want that job, and I just can't get that job. I never get the right, I haven't had a good job and I have no money, and you actually aren't focusing on what you want. You're focusing on what you've got that you don't want, that you don't like. You're not focusing on what you want. Your inner being is focusing upon what you want. What are you focusing on? That is such a good question because, your inner being is looking in the direction of that which you want. What direction are you looking in? Now, how does this work? Let's review. Oh man, there's so many things. They're flying at me. I do have an agenda and I have a thesis. My thesis is that all of our problems are caused by us not knowing who we are. That's my thesis. And then my agenda is I want to get us off fossil fuels. And I want us to understand our own emotional guidance system so that we can be more peaceful on planet Earth. We are all in this together. I cannot escape from you, you rotten neighbor of mine, no matter how much I want to. I cannot subtract you from the equation. Because if you are there for a reason. And I mean that to my audience too now. I'm not just talking about the rotten neighbor. If he's there for a reason. If you are here on this planet, on this earth, in this equation, you are here for a reason. The reason you are here is the wholeness needs you. It's like we are shattered into a million shards. And if you could put us all back together, we are a single crystal skull. Maybe that's not the right picture, but a crystal skull could shatter into a million shards. That's why I probably came to that one. And I got this vision of the crystal skulls, the ones that we don't know where they came from or how old they are or whatever. And then Indiana Jones had a thing with those too, but that probably got a little wild over there. Who are we? Who are we and where did we come from? Where are we going? And how do we get there successfully? I'll tell you where we're going. We're going to a place where we can organize ourselves through our source energy organizational structure, as opposed to having to do it from the outside through laws that we think up with our physical brains and then try to force each other to comply with without understanding who we really are. That is not the way to organize ourselves. Now, I started to tell this earlier. This relates to the meaning, the meaning of the Old Testament versus the New Testament. Now, I am not a Christian, so I'm not going to get all Christian-y on you, but this is a Christian concept, and this is a Christian understanding, and I'm not a Christian. I'm just not a Christian, but I am a Christian, and I am a Hindu, and I am a Muslim, and I am everything. I am everything. I am not just one thing. I don't know. I don't want to impose any kind of concept of separation here if I start talking about Christian concepts, but there's a lot of place. Everybody's right. Everybody is profoundly right about something. It's when they go negative that they're wrong. Now, I'm not saying that they're wrong about so say I go negative because I'm observing something out there that I don't like, that I think is negative, like people raping one another or killing one another or starving children or, whatever it is, some negative thing. I look at it and I don't like it, and I don't need to like it, and I shouldn't like it because it's not good. It's not in alignment. There's nothing right about it. And yet I look at it. Well, there is things right about it, but I look at it and it causes me to go negative because I'm looking at that thing that I don't like. And now I can't fix it because I've gone negative. And now I have joined that frequency instead of being the positive frequency, which is the one that's going to pull us out of the negative frequency. So what is the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament? And why do I keep bringing it up every day? Why is it so important? Because I think it's going to bring in the Christians, that when I can tell them where they're right, they know they're right. But if I, from a non-Christian place, can explain why they're right and why these people are right and why those people are right and where every one of us is right, every one of us is right in a very profound way. And to the extent that you are believing or following your negative mind, you are 180 degrees off of that right, by the way. You have a right, and it's positive, and it's light, and it's moving forward, and it's who you really are. And and it's who you always are too. That is where you are profoundly right. And if you're following your negative mind, then now all of a sudden, you could call it wrong. You could call it 180 degrees off right if you want. That would make it seem a little less condemnatory. Most people, they have an idea of where they're wrong, but they really don't know where they're right. I was married to somebody who was like that. He was a deeply wounded individual whom I used to make a distinction. I loved him, but I wasn't in love with him. I just didn't want anybody to think that I had been fooled by something. But the truth is I deeply loved him. There was something so sweet about him. Something so dear and kind and generous. But he was off. He was off. And he didn't need me to tell him all of the places he was off and all of the places where he was effing up. He needed someone to tell him where he was right. And each and every one of us, in a very profound way, has a rightness within ourselves. It's what you're actually talking about when you sing that little Sunday school song about choose the right. When the choice is laid before you, in its light, the Holy Spirit guides. Oh man, what a truth. What a truth that little Sunday school song is. We do have a rightness within us. It's our GPS guidance system. And it comes from this binary nature that I have got still on this picture that I have not changed to. So here's your emotional guidance scale. And this tells you how you are doing in reference to being in alignment with your broader perspective. You really want to be in alignment with your broader perspective, because you are either in alignment with your broader perspective or you are 180 degrees off. It's a toggle switch. It's only two directions. There really isn't a lot of nuance the other way. You're either going in the direction of where you want, or you're going in the opposite direction of where you want. And you're going either of those directions slowly, or you're doing either of those directions quickly. Now, what makes the difference between these things? Well, okay, here we go. 4 general states of being. When you're going specific, you are going quickly. When you are general, you are going slowly. So, if you are in a negative, know first of all that you're going 180 degrees in the opposite direction of where you want to go. Now, you may be doing it because you need some clarification. I know I watched one daughter who was pretty vague about reality, who was pretty vague about who she was, or what reality was, or how you get what you want, or I didn't actually teach my daughters very well. I didn't teach them much. I didn't have a lot to say. And so they picked up whatever they picked up on their own. I didn't send them to Sunday school. I didn't pedantically try to impose any, I probably should have, and then they would have had something to measure against, something to push against. I gave them nothing to push against. That might have been a favor to them, or it might have been a disservice. It's hard for me to know. But I was what I was when I raised them, and it is what it is. Here's your 4 general states of being. Your 4 general states of being are either specific, positive and negative, or general, positive and negative. Now, if you're in a general, whichever way you're moving, you're going there pretty slow. If you're general, you're pretty slow. You've pulled it back, you're just kind of drifting forward or backwards. You're not going very fast. If you're specific, you're moving faster. And the more specific you get, the faster you are moving. Now, if you're in a negative, the more specific that you start to get, the faster you start going in that negative direction. And you can tell, like, say if you're having a fight with somebody, it starts out kind of general, and then somebody brings up something specific, which makes somebody else think of something more specific, and now you're starting to fight really hard. You're getting angrier and angrier as more and more things, you're flinging them at each other, specific things you're trying to get, and it just gets worse until the next thing you know, somebody picks up a gun and shoots the other one, or the other one says, I want a divorce, and runs, I'm out of here, or whatever. You can see how you are moving faster and faster in that negative direction. All I'm saying, all this is doing is illustrating the truth of what I say when I tell you that your specific is your accelerator, positive or negative. So if you're in a negative, don't try to fix the problem from there. You are not plugged into your source. You're not in alignment with your two beings. These two beings. Oh, these two beings are out of alignment with one another. And that is your only work. Everything else should just be impulse. Your only work is to keep these two in alignment. And the way you can tell if they are in alignment is how you feel. And how you can tell if you are generally in alignment is look around you physically, what is manifesting around you. If it's harsh, then you're probably not doing very well. You may be blaming it on the outside world, but it's you. Because even no matter where you are or what's going on, it actually is possible to get into alignment with your source self and understand the bigger picture of what you're looking at, and then not only feel better about what you're looking at, but have a clearer idea about what direction to go to get to a place where the physical manifestation around you equals that good feeling inside of you. I don't know if that made any sense. It seemed like it made sense when I said it, but whether anybody was able to follow me or not, I don't know. Yesterday, I may have gotten to this the very last couple of seconds of the show. I only have about a half an hour left, so I need to get on with it. The 5 kleshas of Buddhist philosophy, these are considered to be the root causes, the fundamental wellspring causes of all suffering. Comes from not knowing what's real. This is actually a very human thing. I don't think that this does not cause animal suffering. Animal suffering is caused by human beings. Otherwise, it's just stuff happening. Actually, just know that this has to do with not being in alignment with your physical mind, which doesn't really talk about the animals so much, because the animals are either reptiles or mammals. Generally, they could be birds, I suppose, but birds probably relate more to the mammalian brain there because they have babies that they have to care for, so they have the same need to have to care about something outside of themselves. You know, the reptiles don't need to do that because they just lay their eggs and go. And then when their eggs hatch, the babies have to be able to ping off of the environment directly without coaching or nurturing, further nurturing from mom. But anyway, here the neocortex layer here, this is what is causing our human emotion. The neocortex is causing the human emotion. And the reason it causes human emotion is because it's your overview mind. And your overview mind is the one that is or isn't blending well with your source mind. So that neocortex mind that I just showed you, this diagram, this picture right here, that neocortex, that aspect is actually, your neocortex there is actually more corresponding to this right person here, your physical mind. That neocortex is still your physical mind. But it gives you capability of overview thought. And that's what is being compared when you experience emotion. It's a comparison between your physical mind's overview thought, and your source's true overview knowing. So your physical brain takes a thought, your source mind knows, and it has frequencies about what your source mind knows to be true. Now, you think thoughts in your small physicalness, and your inner being gives you a reading as to how true or relevant or useful or how that thought is going to get you forward in the direction of what you want and what you love. The reading that you get is either a positive one from a positive emotion, or it's a negative one from a negative emotion. And the negative emotion is not supposed to, it's not a direct indictment. It's not just an indictment upon what you're observing. It is an indictment on how well you picked the thought. And if it doesn't feel good, if it's a negative thought and it doesn't feel good, spit it out and come up with a better one. Your inner being is always loving you and everyone around you. And when you take small, mean, little hateful thoughts, vengeful thoughts, angry thoughts, remember your emotional guidance scale. If you're taking any of the thoughts below 8 or below, you have picked a thought, because the emotion is actually not a direct reaction to what happened. It's a reaction to a thought you took about what happened. And it's a reading on how useful that thought is to getting you in the direction of what you want. If it feels bad, you're now going 180 degrees in the opposite direction. If you're going very specific, you're going quickly in that direction. If you find yourself doing that, pull back to the general. Life sucks. People are shit. But then you can start guiding yourself to a positive. Life doesn't always suck. Actually, life can be really, look at how nice life looks like over there for those people. In their yachts and in their fancy cars and their, nice houses and stuff. I wish I had that. Okay, you can have that. We can all have the abundance that we all want. We can all have everything we want. But we're gonna have to get off fossil fuels. I think our inner beings have been trying to tell us that forever and ever and ever and ever. Also, one of the reasons why I know we can get off fossil fuels, there's 2 ways to do it. One is incrementally through 1,000 great ideas. And then the big kahuna is source energy itself. All of these things are sitting in front of us, huge, 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 and untapped. Why are they untapped? Well, I'm going to leave you it's like my playlist that I leave to you every day. It's my links list. In my description of the video, I leave all these links to these different YouTube videos and articles on the internet so that you can go over and click over and see the references that I'm talking about. Why I believe we can get off fossil fuels, and why I believe that getting off of fossil fuels will relieve us of all the major problems we've got on planet Earth. Growing deserts, relentless war, worldwide poverty, starving children, scarcity in general, growing deserts, garbage island, global warming. All of those things, every single one of them will be ameliorated as soon as we are off of fossil fuels. And certainly as soon as we're on to source energy. Now, until we get full on to source energy, then it's probably going to be a process of us getting more and cleaner and more abundant as the abundance fleshes out. and we come to realize who we are, the source energy is going to get us onto little compact devices without moving parts, solid state devices in every home all across the planet. Powering, it's your own personal power system, your own personal power plant, plugging all of your devices directly into source energy, running your tillers and your air conditioners and your desalinating devices, so that you know, maybe you're on the coast and you have a little maybe you're on the Chilean coast and it doesn't rain there, but you want to live there because you love the sun and it's beautiful down there. So you have your little device plugged into your little solid state source energy device, and you've got your little personal desalinization thing going on, because it runs on clean, free, unlimited energy. You know, you got your little device, you can just churn out all the water you want. And then you've got your little compound where you're growing your vegetables and whatever. You're on the internet, you're connected with the rest of humanity, talking to the rest of humanity. You're producing some sort of product that now you want to add to the supply chain of humanity. You don't need to necessarily to feed yourself. You've got your compound, but maybe you want to trade technologies. You want to offer your little things so that you can upgrade your desalinators so you can make your compound bigger. Or maybe you want to, you need a computer, you need a phone, and you need to, whatever. We have such a beautiful future in front of us, people. But we've got to get off fossil fuels. And I believe that a better understanding of who am I as source energy, is going to get us there. Now, that was a little vision of the solid state device, us plugged directly into source energy. That's the big kahuna. That's the holy grail. But we don't have to just stay on fossil fuels. And we do not have to just collectively, in terms of how our government thinks about projects, we don't just have to think about our infrastructure projects as being more refineries and pipelines running across sacred aquifers down to refineries, taking that finished product, putting it onto barges and sending it across heaving seas to possibly bust open and send millions of gallons of noxious, toxic poison into our... What we did in 2009 to the Gulf of Mexico is almost too horrible to even speak about. So I'm not going to speak about it. And I didn't really study it. But at the time when it went by, I could hear the voices saying how awful it was. And I can only imagine the horrors of the marine life swimming into the millions of gallons of that crap that we put into the Gulf of Mexico to keep the oil from the deep horizon, that oil spill that happened, to keep it from surfacing, to keep it down, to keep it under the ocean. We put millions of gallons of this horrible, horrible, poisonous, noxious toxin on top of it to keep it from coming up. Down below, I can only imagine the death and destruction, the nightmare, the horror that must have caused. Now, I heard some reports of it. I haven't really gone over there, and it's not a big, it's bad. It's bad. I only have to know it's bad. We don't want to be doing shit like that. We don't need to be doing shit like that. So I said that I leave this list of links The first one is this movie. Please go watch it if you haven't already. The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. This will convince you. Please believe this movie. This movie should convince you that we don't need to be on fossil fuels and that we have been artificially kind of nudged, coerced, forced, lied to. We are up against let's don't talk about what we're up against. Does not matter what we are up against. Just know what you know and move in the direction of where you want to go. And we will get there. Watch this movie, The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. It's a documentary of the history of the brutal suppression of great ideas that would have incrementally got us off fossil fuels all along. We can still do it. We just need to know we can. Have a national call for it, a national push for it. Screw the fossil fuel industry and go for alternative energies. Now, we don't need to think of it that way, though. I probably shouldn't have said it that way. There's a lot of people who work for the fossil fuel industry who think that they need to keep the fossil fuel industry going, or they themselves will not have access to the human supply chain. We can talk about that, but we can't talk about it today because I only have 14 minutes left. The next thing I have here is the origin of mass and nature of gravity video, because our understandings of the mathematics of this, the mathematics of unified physics, is going to bring us the future that we're looking for. It has been unified. Now, conventional physics does not acknowledge this necessarily. Your people working for IBM and stuff such, and the people working for Raytheon and Boeing and Tesla, they have not necessarily acknowledged that the unification has happened, because the unification points directly to things like the holographic universe and universal consciousness and the fact that it's actually all mental, and the foaming universes, and the lack of a need to be on fossil fuel. And all of conventional physics is deeply in bed with all of the rest of the industrial complex. And all of the industrial complex is deeply in bed with oil and war and things that just do not, they are not in alignment with where we are really going. I'm not talking about us not having access to fun and technology and transportation and magnificent freedom and wonder and all the things that we want. We're just going to have to leave war and fossil fuel behind. And the military-industrial complex is in charge of how we get to space, how we extract our fossil fuels. It's a complex that's, wow. I just came to a place in my mind where, and this is so funny too, because you'll never guess what my husband did for a living. For 40 years, he launched conventional rockets into outer space for the aerospace industry. He actually did it for the Air Force for 20 years, and then he did it for a private company for 20 years afterwards, and he is still somewhat involved with them. He keeps in touch with, the latest breaking news on all of this stuff, and I think of all of it, myself, I think of all of it as deeply passé. Way 20th century at best technology, and not what the best of the 20th century could have been. we were sort of guided down that path by people who wanted us to keep using fossil fuels so that they could keep their control over the world. It does not have to be that way. As soon as energy, the source of energy is realized everywhere, it becomes real, and there really is energy flowing from every source, from every location. That's those solid state devices. As soon as that happens, then this paradigm we've got going on right now will dissolve. I believe it. I believe it. The next one is Quantum Revolution. That is actually a series that was done by Nassim Haramein. That is just the first episode. It's called The Science of a Unified Universe. I still need to find the rest of them. I tried to find it this morning, but I was late starting and I didn't look very long. The next one is The Connected Universe. That is another thing Nassim did. Patrick Stewart narrates this. It's actually a pretty high production value movie. Talks about the unifying of the forces of physics, the unifying the quantum and the cosmological aspects of mathematics and physics, and what it implies, what has been implied by that unification. It's not actually something that conventional physics has accepted, although I think they're going to have to, because the mathematics works. Nassim and his mathematics was ahead of, he predicted a new radius of a proton, which is, you can only do that mathematically. It's not like you're going to measure that, you know. He predicted the new, well, they did measure it actually, and it turned out to be Nassim's number. And as a matter of fact, Nassim's number might even be even more accurate than how the measurement came out. Anyway, The Connected Universe. Then Living in the Future's Past. This is a good movie. I think of it less of a wholeness, more of a partial. It does not have the information of the other stuff added to it. But it's interesting because it talks about us as a superorganism, which we are. And it talks about us as being made of oil, which we are. And I'm talking about how we can change that and still be high energy beings, source energy beings. Then let's see, Butterfly Dreaming, that's just an article. Origin of Mass, Nature, Gravity, that's a paper. And then Whirling Dervishes. The reason I put that one in is because everything is spin. And when you watch that and you're like, oh. Now, I didn't find this and say, oh, this proves that everything is spin. It's like, I know everything is spin. And look at how this is such a beautiful example of why do the dervishes whirl? They do because everything is spin. And they have a particular technique, so they don't get dizzy, but they get into the flow with this spin, and it makes them feel closer to God. Very cool, very cool. So that's my links list. I'm coming up on an hour and a half, so I'm going to have to stop here pretty soon. I did show this slide. I do believe that neocortex comes from the fused... It does. 76% of the neocortex volume comes from human chromosome number 2. And human chromosome number 2 is a fused chromosome. This is that bumping up thing that I mentioned. We were genetically modified 200,000 years ago. It gave us a little bit of a head start, but it also created something within us that we've got to understand. What it created in us is our emotions. And you've got to know that our emotions are caused by a relative, it's a relationship between these two minds. They're both emitting a frequency. They are both thinking thoughts separate from one another. Source mind is just thinking about what is. Well, actually, Source is not thinking about what is. Source is knowing what is, thinking about what you love. What are you thinking about? Source is holding your love tight, holding onto your love and looking at everything that you have declared that you love, that you prefer, that you care about. That's all Source is thinking about. What you want, what you'd like to do, what's interesting, what's fun, everything that is light and wonderful in you, that's what your Source is looking at. And in the meantime, it's knowing all of the physicality of everything all around you. Now, it takes a thought. It has these thoughts that are big, rolling, vibrational frequencies. Big, long, continuous, rolling, connected frequencies. What are you thinking? Are you thinking little mean, disconnected, discordant, out of alignment, crappy thoughts? Because when you take thoughts like that, they clash with what your Source mind is thinking, and that's why you feel negative emotion. Don't attribute any more or less meaning than that to your negative emotion. Your negative emotion is important. It means pick a different damn thought. That's what your negative emotion really means. It doesn't mean you have to like that thing that caused the negative emotion. Actually, the thing didn't cause the negative emotion. Your thought about it is what caused the negative emotion. So think a different thought about what you're thinking, about what you're looking at. Spit out that thought that feels so bad. Pick a different one. I could give you some examples, but I'm running out of time. I have 4.5 minutes and I have to decide what exactly I'm going to finish. About 5 minutes. I don't have to end at exactly the stroke of 1.5 hours, but I do like to keep it generally that length. I don't want to make this show go longer. I could do other shows. Maybe I'll come back this afternoon and I'll do a show called Divine Autonomy. And I'll keep circling back around to the concept of divine autonomy until you get the idea of what I'm talking about when I say each and every one of us possesses this powerful thing I'm calling divine autonomy. It's the power of your individuation from the Source that you are also a part of. So your Source aspect has tremendous power. The fact that you possess an individuated spin of your own connected to Source energy has tremendous power for you. And if you would man the center of the center of the center of your equipment, get into your equipment and line up your two beings. Make sure that you do not let your thinking mind think thoughts that are ridiculous, out of alignment thoughts. You'll know that they are because when you think them, they'll feel bad. When you think the good ones, they feel good. When you find resonance with your Source, it always feels good. And the deeper that you resonate with your Source, the better it feels. Until if you are right on it, all of your thoughts feel really good. You have all kinds of really good ideas. And a wonderful, fabulous ability to help humanity. Now, I'm getting ready to end, and I'm going to apologize if you've made it all the way to the end of today. I had a couple of moments that were okay. But I was a little bit disconnected today, and I'm sorry about that. I uh, I I invite you to tune back in later today when I'm going to post. Um, at least I hope I'm going to post another special edition with my special guest, the only guest that has ever been on the show. She's coming back today, and we're going to try it again. I hope we come up with some good stuff, and I hope that you can join us. And until then, uh, I'm just going to have to leave it right there. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back for the next week, almost week, and starting next Friday, Friday the 14th, I've got to take 9 days off. 10 days off, actually. And the reason is we're traveling, and I travel away from my studio. At some point, maybe I can bring my studio with me when we travel. But I don't think I'm really there yet. So I'll be off for a week, and I'm sorry about that. But there's plenty of archived stuff behind me. Many, many wonderful episodes. And I know some of those days I was hot. I was on a roll. I did some really good stuff. Go back and check out some of those. Check out some of them that have 0 views. They are virgins ready for you to plunder. Anyway, until I come back into the studio and see you again, perhaps later this morning, hopefully later this morning, if my guest arrives safely, we will do that. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow morning. And until then, I wish you well. I bid you peace, and may the source be with you.